Here's a Radio Shack HTX 212. This is a 2-meter mobile radio. I normally don't work on stuff like this in my videos, but well, this one needed a repair, and I figured I'd go ahead and film it and share it with you guys in case somebody out there has the same issue. This radio I got not too long ago. I've done a little work to it to kind of straighten it out. It was stored in a real bad environment, probably a real, an environment with a lot of moisture. I've cleaned it up quite a bit and done some repairs to it. The internal speaker in it was pretty bad. Sounded, the speaker was bad. That's all I can put it. The sound sounded really flat on it, and so I replaced the internal speaker on it already. And the power cord on the back of it, I took this one off a junker radio because the original power cord in it was hacked up and had multiple splices in it, and the most important part is it didn't even have a fuse. And this one's got a fuse, not shown here, but I do have the cable that plugs into this, which is a standard T connector cable for, which is pretty well standard on these radios. And the connector part that I've got is on my power supply in the house, and it's got a fuse on it. So anyway, I had to replace the power cord and go in there and solder in a power cord, a new power cord. But this radio has an issue where when you plug in the microphone, which this radio didn't have a microphone when I got it, so I've kind of had to do some rigging up until I can get a microphone. I've got one on order, but the seller that I got it from is really slow in shipping it. Anyway, when you plug this in, when you plug it all the way in like that, the transmit drops out, and basically it's the jack inside the radio that's corroded. When I got the radio, it was noted in the sale about that being corroded. I didn't think it was too big of a deal. I thought maybe I can go in there and just pull the pins up a little bit and scrape them off and they'll be okay, but that isn't the case. They have gotten corroded to the point to where they're weak, and they don't have any spring elasticity on them. Now, I'll be honest with you, on these little ham radios, VHF radios or HF radios or whatever, a lot of these manufacturers have pretty much gone standard to these type of RJ45 jacks, and I don't like them at all. They're a pain in the neck. You can't wire, they're not easy to wire up like the old 8-pin or 6-pin plugs they used to have. And they're just a pain in the butt, to be honest with you. That's my take on them. But anyway, I gotta replace this jack inside the radio, and I thought, well, maybe I could get one of those type of connectors out of an old junk router or something like that. But most of those, the mounting pins mount flat down because it's a circuit board. But this one has to mount straight to the back, so the pins have to come out of the back of the jack. So there is a difference in these plugs, but I had to order them, but I could only order 10 of them at a time. I don't, you can't ever buy one of anything, but this is going to be our replacement. As I said before, the pins have to come straight out of the back, so when it's mounted in the radio, they go straight to the LCD board and solder in that way. So I had to order the correct jacks. They weren't very expensive. It was only like $3 for 10 of them, plus $2 shipping, so about $5. But anyway, hopefully these will work. So we'll go ahead and start tearing this thing down, and I'll show you how to get it apart if somebody has to work on one of these things. And by the way, I wanted to note this radio was made in January of 1995, and as far as I can tell, this is my best guess on this. Radio Shack never made any of their products. They always contracted out to companies to make their products, like Sears did for many years, and Montgomery Ward, and many other retailers. From the information I can gather, I believe this radio is made by Midland Maxon, which is the same company that made their handheld that they had back in the 90s. It was pretty popular, the HTX 202. This is an HTX 212. This radio is 10 watts on low power and 45 watts on high. So anyway, the first thing we need to do is get the mounting bracket that I've got on it off of there. And that's just these two screws here. And after that, we're going to need to remove all 4 of these screws on top, which is these 2 and these 2. The rest hold the speaker in. And then we're going to need to flip it over, and we're going to need to remove these 4 screws here. Alright, I have the top and bottom covers removed on it. Now, you have a speaker connection. When you pull this top cover off that has a speaker on it, it has a disconnect back there by the audio output transformer that disconnects the speaker, and it's just a matter of plugging and unplugging it. Very easy. So with this front faceplate, we're going to want to remove this. So what we're going to do is we need to remove this top screw and this screw here on the bottom, and the rest of these are tabs. So you'll want to kind of pull up on these while you're pulling forward to get it off. Alright, now what you're going to want to do after you remove these screws, you're going to want to be real careful when you pull this off, because these buttons right here are loose. They don't stay in here. When you pull the face away from here, these are going to fall out. So make sure that you're aware of that when you pull this face off. Like I said, these are just little tabs. You're going to want to pull up on them and push forward, and then you're going to want to flip it over and do the same thing here. Pull up and push forward, up and forward. Okay, now that it's dislodged, you should be able to pull this face right off. But like I said, see, these things are already starting to fall out, so you're going to want to make sure that you hold you probably want to pull it straight off with holding the radio straight up like this, so you don't lose your buttons. And that's it. The face comes right off. And again, your buttons are going to be loose here, so I usually just kind of set that aside like that right there, and it's a good idea for you to keep all your screws in a magnetic cup so you don't lose them. Now, this is what we want to replace right here, is this mic jack right here. But in order to get it off, we're going to have to take the display board off, and in order to do that, we're going to have to take a few more things off. Yeah, they don't make it easy for you to do this, but it's not impossible. It's just a few little things you got to pull off. All right, in order to get this white sort of light, I believe this is a light diffuser type of plastic cover they've got over this thing. You're gonna have to take these little nuts off of these knobs here, which has a tab on them. So you're gonna have to figure out a way to loosen those up. Small pair of needle nose pliers might get it. Sometimes I use a flathead screwdriver and bump them a couple of times, and they'll break loose that way. It just depends on what you have, but just be careful not to wring out those little tabs there inside the little notches on those nuts, or you'll never get them back on there. Okay, so this was actually the LCD display together with the light diffuser that unplugs as one unit. So You know, basically you're going to pull those nuts off that I showed you, and you pull straight out, and these pins, it'll disconnect from these pins. So that gets that off and out of your way. And now we're going to want to remove these three screws. One over here on the left, one here, and one on the far right here. Okay, and your front, imagine this would be the CPU board, has two connectors behind it. You're just going to want to pull straight up, and you can wiggle it back and forth, make it a little easier to disconnect. And so that gets off what we need to get to get this mic jack taken off, which is going to involve desoldering these 8 pins, and it looks like they have some glue or something in there, but I imagine you could probably defeat that glue once you get the solder joints successfully desoldered. And you could always go in there and cut in there with a little X-Acto knife or something to break that free. But yeah, this looks pretty much exactly like the one I've got. So hopefully this will go off without too much of a hitch. It looks like it's pretty close. This one has a cut in the bottom of it, and this one doesn't. I really don't know why that is. Just design difference, I guess. Alright, I got our old jack out. It was kind of hard to get all those little legs unsoldered, but we got it out, minus a pin that wouldn't come out, and end up having to pull it out separately. But anyway, I got it out. So this one, as far as I can tell, looks like a pretty good replacement. Not, you know, the pins aren't exactly made exactly the same on them, but it's pretty close enough, and it'll do the job just fine. So well, now that we got it soldered in, we can put in our new one. Alright, we got our new mic jack installed, all soldered back into place. Looks like it turned out pretty good, and basically those little pins, I put you a drop of glue back on here, but this one seems to hold in there pretty good. But I think I'll put a little drop of glue on there and let it dry before I put this back together. Alright, we're just gonna basically reverse the removal and put it back together. Gonna plug that board down in there like that, and put our 3 screws back in there, and then put our display board back on, which is just plugged back in, and put our nuts back on, and put our faceplate back on. Okay, we got our faceplate back on, and the mic jack looks pretty good. Doesn't even really look like a replacement. That's the way you want it to turn out. Alright, so anyway, now when we want to put these covers back on, they go on a certain way. Obviously the back rim, that rim there, goes towards the back, and you'll notice these tabs, they have them on both sides of the cover. You're going to want to position this straight down on each side. It's hard to do this holding the camera, but you're going to want to do it like this, so they go and tuck up under the rim of the faceplate. And the same with the top speaker. Don't forget to plug your speaker back in.
Yeah, the radio sounded good, and it sounds like it's good to go.
Right, okay. Well, 73s, and like I said, appreciate the radio check. So yeah, don't have too much fun over there with your soldering iron, and we'll catch you later. Well, as you can see, the radio is working fine now, so I'll call this one fixed. I'll be glad when I get a little bit better microphone set up. I'm just running this Kraco CB microphone, kind of wired into a bunch of adapters and going into the radio, but everybody says it sounds okay. But yeah, I'll be glad when I can get a DTMF mic. I've got one on order, but just haven't gotten it in. Alright, so there's the little repair on the little 1995 Radio Shack HTX 212. Thanks for watching.